I think we'll go ahead and get started because we're only missing a couple, and I'll let them in if they join us late. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Caitlin, and I am the owner and private yoga instructor with Tranquil Waves Yoga. And I really wanted to do this workshop today because it was something I needed early on in my practice. I had multiple knee injuries all through middle school, high school, finally had surgery in college. And while that fixed a lot of it, I still struggled with some functional things. And when I got into yoga, I figured out what some of those were because my knee would catch as I went to go from like a straight leg position to a bent leg position. And I had started yoga before my previous pregnancy and then had to stop. I didn't have to stop. I wasn't well enough versed in how to continue, so I didn't keep it up. It's probably more. And noticed a lot of instability and pain issues in my knees as I gained weight with the pregnancy. And this time around, I have been able to maintain. My knees are not the reason that my practice isn't super consistent. It has more to do with energy level and belly girth that limits me now, but my knees feel a lot better. And so I wanted to be able to pass on that knowledge that I've gained from my personal practice and also from my experience as a physical therapist assistant. So what I'm hoping is we'll go through some basic stuff and I'll give some tips on like flooring options, like where might be a better spot to practice and why, shoes or barefoot. And then we'll go through some poses and props and jump in at any time. You can unmute yourself and pipe up and we can kind of make it open forum and go from there too if there's something specific you want to go over. So it's going to be, we'll move a little bit, but not a ton. And if we need a moving break, we can add that in too. And questions at any point too, you can just jump in. I do have my computer set up to the side so I can see you all a little bit clearer because my iPad's for me so that you can see my mat, which I may have to adjust anyway. But don't hesitate to jump in and let me know. All right, so one of the big I noticed a difference in, especially with my knees and then also with my ankles, so anything from that ground up, building foundation, is carpet versus like hardwood or cork flooring or tile. You want ideally a firmer surface, but like tile might not be super comfortable either. So knowing that can play into stability at the ankle, which will impact the knee. Carpeting will give you more cushioning. So for someone who has issues kneeling, that extra cushion might be the perfect way for them to start. I find it more challenging because of that cushion. It makes it harder to balance in some of the balance poses. But it depends on what you're looking for in your practice too. Hardwood and tile are more stable, but like I said, they're going to be harder. So kneeling down would make it more of a challenge, but that's where we'll go through some tips on props that you can try or just things you might have around the house that can work to give you a little bit more cushion. Shoes or barefoot is kind of a similar idea. I prefer to practice barefoot. Most practiced yogis do it barefoot. And it's really helpful for building that stability and strength and all those little muscles in your feet, which can help with balance down the road as we age, because it's kind of that signal comes from the ground up to where we are in space, and we lose that if we have shoes on. However, if somebody has like neuropathy, so they have pain and numbness in their legs and feet, shoes might be a better idea because it's going to give them that stability. It will also protect their skin, as people with diabetes are at higher risk for ulcers from the skin breaking down, and nobody wants to deal with that. And so at that point, shoes would be better. I've worked with students that had come out of a foot surgery. She wore shoes for a long time in her practice and has recently started transitioning back to barefoot because she needed that additional stability initially. I got lots of notes, so. All right, so what my thought is we'll kind of go through a few poses. Did you have a question, Charlie?
Yes, I do. What if you have flat feet? Is there a difference in then if you practice with, on barefoot or with shoes?
I mean, you can go either way. I would tend to recommend going barefoot because you can help work on some of that stability and strength through those smaller muscles in the foot. But again, it would depend on pain and like how much you have to do the rest of the day if you get kind of sore doing that, because it would be an extra workout to work on some of that stability through there. I know that there are taping techniques that I used in physical therapy that can mimic a little bit of arch support, but you could still be barefoot. I can send you a couple videos on that if it's something you're interested in.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay. Yeah, it's super easy. My sister has done it a few times when she was running. I would tape her arches or up the back of her calf to help with some stuff, and it made a big difference for her. And it's nice because you can wear it under your socks, or she, I think, wore sandals to a wedding with it on.
Yes, it helped a lot. I was able to dance.
Yeah, because it's in balancing poses, I can do them, but it's sometimes so painful in my ankles.
Okay.
Because it needs to work more, I guess.
Yeah. But I can definitely, and what we can figure out through today's session is if people have specific questions with tips like that, I'll make a list and I can send out some materials with links to find props or techniques like that. That the taping was super easy to do yourself. The videos are great on it, and I can give you some links to where to get the tape too.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I'll make a note for it so I don't forget. Can you all come down? Can you guys see me okay?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So one of the things that most people have the trouble with, I know, with their knees, and this was one that I struggled with pretty soon after my surgery, and then it continued to improve and now doesn't generally, I don't even think about it much of the time, but it's kneeling. It can be really uncomfortable because especially after like a knee surgery, those nerves have been damaged in the knee as they either from the injury itself or when they go in to fix it, they're as careful as they can, but like I still have numb areas on my knee and things can be hypersensitive. Pants used to bother me a little bit. They would rub weird. So 2 quick tips that are pretty simple that you'll have easily at home. One was when I would be not generally hands and knees, because that one wasn't too bad, but if I was in like a lunge, and you can try these too. All you need to do is flip, you can flip the edge of your mat over, and that just doubled your thickness under that knee. It's not super convenient in the middle of like a whole flow sequence, but in a gentle class or slow flow or practicing on your own, either with a video on YouTube or whatever, where you can kind of pause it and catch up, it can be a huge help. And it made a big difference for me being able to then go maybe a little bit deeper into a stretch that I felt I could do, but couldn't tolerate it on my knee, or even add like extra quad stretch because of where it put that pressure on my knee. One of the other options, getting slivers from our floor up here, is to have a second mat. And I used to practice with a second one out, and then I would sometimes just cross them. So they're crossed like in the middle where my knees would go, so that when I'm in a lunge standing, my feet are on either side of it and I don't have to keep moving it in and out of the way. But if I go down to a lower lunge, it's right there and it gives me that extra cushion. So what's nice is you can play around with some stuff. You can flip edge of your mat over, have a second mat, a blanket. Did somebody have a question? Oh, I heard somebody. In chat. Let's see what. That's from Charlie before. The other thing you can do is have a rolled blanket, or they do make, I've not used them, but I've seen other students use them. Actually, one of the YouTube yoga instructors I used to follow would use them. I think it's called a knee jelly, and it's this little like round cushion that you can just have off to the side and put it on, and just it fits like right over your knee. And I've seen people use those with some success too, to take that little bit of pressure off. And these tips can work anytime you're on your knees. Any questions with that, with lunge, using a second mat, flipping a corner?
Just adding on, I use actually a bathroom mat, because those are non-slip and it's actually really soft to touch. So I have like my yoga mat, and then I have a round bathroom mat on top.
That's perfect. I love that idea.
And it's a very inexpensive way for that.
Yeah, and I love the non-slip, because like I've used towels and stuff but sometimes they're sliding on my mat as much as I was. So that's a great tip. And sometimes it's more about cueing than actually having a prop. So let's all come to tabletop and just kind of we'll feel how things feel a little bit different. So you're trying to line knees up under your hips, wrists under the shoulders, belly's up and in. And what most of us will find is naturally you can almost pick your feet up and it changes nothing in the pose. But what that does is it's putting a ton of pressure right below the kneecaps on both sides. And it can be really uncomfortable for some people. So I try to cue it more. You really want to press into the mat through the tops of the feet and the shins. You're almost going to feel like your knees are going to come up, but they don't have to come up. What it does is it's going to spread that weight out a little bit more through the lower leg, so it's not all on the knee. I also notice I get a bit more core activation when I do it that way too. And it's a pretty simple little tweak that has more to do with how the pose is cued or how you set yourself up in the pose than using extra stuff to make it more comfortable. How'd that feel for everybody? Did you notice the difference?
Yes.
Awesome. So strangely enough, yeah, was there a question? Did somebody chime in? I keep thinking I hear somebody. Okay. Strangely enough, plank is another pose that really bothered me. And it actually bothered me more with my legs straight. because of the muscle tension required to maintain that stiff, straight board. And this is one I'm not gonna demonstrate right now. Plank is a bit of a challenge. But having the leg straight really engages through the quad. And my issue with my knees is that my kneecaps don't track straight up and down. They kind of tend to go out to the side. And trying to hold that there could get really uncomfortable. So sometimes going down to my knees was actually more comfortable than being straight up. And what's great with like this kind of tweak, you can go back and forth. In the same class, you can do full on plank for part, you can go to your knees for others, you can mix it up, just knowing that there are options that if something gets uncomfortable, tweak it just a little, and you can try it a different way. And the same cushioning options are available too for that if you need that extra cushion. So other ones that people have trouble with can be anything. So like I'm sitting kneeling. So anything where you're at that full flexion, that full bend in your knee can be really uncomfortable for people. And so there's a few different ways we can make that easier too. And so a block is one, and there are lots of different block options. I generally use a cork block, but I also have foam. The foam one is a little softer, so that can be really nice, especially as you get started and you're using it. I prefer the cork, but that's just because of where I'm at in my practice, and I like that firmer support because I'll use it to like unweight and get my body up off the mat. I can't do that as well on a foam one. But for this, what you can do is either have it, so with a block, we say there are 3 levels. So there's 1, 2, and 3. And generally, if you're gonna sit on it, 1 or 2 is the most comfortable because I don't know anybody who would think that might be comfortable, a little too pinpointed pain. But I usually do it on that first level, put it between my feet and sit back. Because then it looks almost identical to what I was doing, but it just took a little bit of that strain off of my knees and makes it just a little bit more comfortable. If you don't have blocks, a stack of books will work. Depending on the height and firmness of a pillow, that can work too. And again, all of these, excuse me, are just, you can find something at home that could work, rolling a blanket up, anything that would get your hips up a little bit higher. Child's pose is another one that is similar to this, and then we add the folding forward. I have to do child's pose now with my knees farther apart because baby doesn't like it otherwise. And you can even put sitting on a block and coming forward, because then it keeps, like I have something to ground my hips into, otherwise they want to pop up. But what I tend to find even more comfortable than that is using, this is a bolster I got from Manduka, but a pillow or a rolled blanket will work as well too. And you can, sitting back this way, it takes some of, again, it lessens that flexion, that huge bend on the knee, and makes it more comfortable. Or like I have a meditation cushion that would work too, to sit on, to give you a little bit more height.
Normally the tops of my feet hurt. Like it's not my legs so much, it's my feet, the tops of my feet.
So you
Like
could do
stretch.
Is that Tammy?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So I have this is my towel that I use for like the hot yoga classes,
Okay.
but a towel or a blanket would work too. And if you put that under your ankles, that will keep a little bit of a bend in your ankles versus forcing your foot pointed. You can always really challenge yourself and go up on the toes, but I can't tolerate that for very long either. But let's see how, because you could possibly do it too over the cushion and have like your shins on the cushion, and that just took a ton of pressure off of my tops of my feet and my ankles to do child's pose, because now they can move more. That makes sense?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. The main idea is to, whatever position you're in, whether it's completely straight or completely bent, if that bothers you, don't go to that extreme. So like Tammy was saying, having her feet flat to the mat bothers her. So then you just need to bring it so you have something supporting you to bring a little bit of a bend back into the ankle. Same thing goes for the knee, the hip, the shoulders. You just back it off from that edge, and having a prop can let you do that, but still be able to relax into the pose and not be like, okay, I gotta keep my ankles bent, my knees, like, it just takes some of that processing out and can make it a lot easier and more supportive of your practice. And I thought I was all prepped, and I wasn't. I have one more prop available, but I can still talk through it. So we kind of started talking about lunges, and I started with like the low lunge and how we would cushion the knee for that. So similar to the plank, I would have issues with having the back leg super, super straight, because that pressure, again, how my kneecaps would track is not straight up and down. They come and kind of go out to the side. And so holding that position wasn't always comfortable. It is now because I've been consistent in my practice and it's improved. But there's a few options on what you can do. You can put just a micro bend. So what that basically means is you're not forcing it locked, but you're not like halfway down in this like active strengthening lunge like you do at the gym where you're gonna be here. So it's just forward of that locked position can take a lot of that strain off. The other option, I'm trying to look for something to use. We're in the middle of remodeling our upstairs, so stuff is never where I think it should be. But a chair is a great option too. Get some of the drywall dust off of it. So for like a lunge, I could be here. So now my weight is mostly on the chair through kind of that left glute and then my left thigh. And then it doesn't make as much pressure on the front knee or the back knee, but I can still maintain that lunge and still get the benefits because my legs are still engaged, but I'm not stressing those joints quite as much. And a chair can be a really simple tool to make some of these poses more accessible. Because one of the things we do back at all fours position is a lot of times we'll do that cat and cow. It's something you can do seated in a chair too. So you're gonna arch the cow, round for cat, and you've just completely eliminated the need to be down on your knees. Another thing with lunges, because I know this came up for someone, is similar to Charlie talked about when she's in the balance poses, the uncomfortableness in the feet. They'll also cramp sometimes. And so what I have found to be helpful, aside from making sure you're hydrated enough while you're doing things, is to make sure weight is even between both feet, because the tendency is to shift to whichever leg is forward or bent. You really want that weight to be in the center, whether it's in crescent or warrior one or warrior two. That weight should be even. And the less even it is, the more likely you're going to get usually a cramp in that front foot, because that's the one you're putting all the pressure on. But like in warrior two, you want to really make sure the whole, well, in all of them except for crescent, because you're up on the ball of your foot. Anything else where both feet are flat, you want to make sure the weight is even on the entire foot, and then weight between the feet are even. So even when you change and I bend and straighten, my weight is still the same, and it encourages more muscle activation through the legs, which can take some of the strain off the knees, but then also helps decrease the chances of those foot cramps. Any questions at this point? Did that answer your question, Elizabeth?
Yeah, it did.
Okay, good. But you know, you can always reach out to me too if you find that, okay, it's not quite working. Let's problem solve it a little bit more. We can do that too.
Yeah, for sure.
So chair pose is another one that I found really bothered my knees. And I think the biggest tip in this one is to, I know that when you take a group class, because I've taught group classes, we always are like describing it as what some people will call the full expression of the pose. I don't even like that concept anymore, because everybody's full expression is different. So you shouldn't compare yourself to what the teacher's trying to describe or anybody else in the room. Go to the depth that is comfortable for you with the foot placement that's comfortable for you. So most of the times in a class, it is cued feet and ankles together, knees together, and you're kind of squeezing together, and then you sit back. That really bothered my knees for a while, because of, especially as women, we tend to have what in PT we call a Q angle. And it's from the point of the hips. If I go straight down, my knees are already in from that. And that's why a lot of women have issues like I did playing basketball and I dislocated, or a lot of people have had ACL tears. It's because anatomically we're built that kind of puts pressure on some of those structures. So I found it more comfortable, more stable, and more accessible to come even just hip distance apart. Now, if I'm going to do it and we have to do any kind of forward fold from it, I go wider because I got some stuff in the way and baby doesn't like to be squished. So we're all like, our practice changes. One day you could be feeling great and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna go right together, do the whole thing. And then another day you're like, yeah, no, let's gonna go here. And the pose can be identical. I feel I can get my weight back a little bit better if my stance is a little bit wider. This takes a lot of balance and control to do. and I've gotten so I can do it better. This is a lot easier for me to maintain, and it's a subtle difference with how far my feet are apart. And that can be true of any pose that we cue in yoga. The length of your lunge is dependent on your body and how it feels. So that's always your default, is to pay attention to what you notice and what you feel. You can ask the teacher for tips. They might come over, and I know I've gone over, and I try to always word it as we're working towards being able to, like, this is the direction you want to try and aim your hips or your pelvis, or you're trying to get kind of that 90-degree bend in the knee. I gear it so somebody knows where we're trying to go, but without telling them this is where you have to be, to give them that option to meet themselves where they are. And I know as a beginner student, I didn't feel that I could take those options when I was in a class. I'm much more comfortable now, especially now, taking a class kind of I'm doing what they're telling me, but I've significantly modified it for what my body needs in that moment. And it varies. Some days I'll be like, yeah, I'm taking this power class, and others I'm like, yeah, nope, we're gonna do some yin today. Like, it just depends. And so knowing that and having these tools, knowing there's options out there, can make any yoga class a lot more accessible. You can also literally use a chair for chair pose and sit at the edge of a chair. Would be another way to easily modify it to take some of that pressure off your knees. Otherwise, the other poses I've had issues with personally were any of the stretches we tend to do towards the end of a class that have one or both legs straight. And it's similar to the issues I had when up in plank or in a lunge, where my knee is super duper straight. It put a lot of pressure on my knees. So again, one of the simple things to do would just be to let them bend slightly, which can be hard to do. That's where a blanket or a towel can work, and you just put it, this one's a little thin, but put it under the knees, and it naturally puts a little bit of that bend in and can make it easier to do. Some of the issues in these stretches will also come from this being hard to sit up straight with your hips. So you could sit up on a block and then still have, I've done a block and then put a bolster under my knees. And because I'm up on the block, it's already put me forward to do a forward fold, and then my knees are still supported, but it just makes the whole pose a lot more comfortable. And I feel a better benefit of what the pose is trying to help me accomplish without straining myself or trying to do something my body isn't designed to do. Because some of us naturally are more flexible than others. And yes, some of that has to do with use of muscles and flexibility in the muscles. But I found that more of that actually has to do with anatomically how our bones are shaped and how they fit together. That will ultimately be a limit of where your mobility stops, or where some people can contort themselves into pretzels. That's not me. It's never gonna be me. So I don't even, I've taken that out of, oh, this is the image I need to get to. No, not healthy for me. That's how I'll end up hurt. And that's not the point of yoga. So I know I talk a lot. I tend to talk fast. I apologize. Is there anything that we went over that you want to hear or see again? is there anything that's come up that you're like, oh, I wonder what we could do in this position? I'd be happy to go over something specific. Like Shelby, I know you have a client right now that has some knee concerns. Did you find this helpful, or is there something specific you'd like to hear about or see?
I think I definitely found this helpful. I took a lot of notes. I've only had one session with her so far, but she just told me that she likes to avoid being off her knee. So like finding more poses that aren't so centered on the knee, and then also having these like ways to modify if we are on knees is helpful.
Well, and you can always reach out if something comes up in one of your sessions with her. I'd be happy to consult
Cool.
and give you some other
Thank
tips.
you.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I do have a question, Caitlin. What would you advise for people who struggle with their wrists? Because sometimes with beginners, that's one of the most common issues.
It is, and unfortunately, I had to learn that the hard way because I sprained my wrist while in my teacher training and had to adapt my entire practice while we were all doing our classes teaching each other. So that was like 8 classes a weekend. Few options, trying to see what I have up here, are, I know we always cue or try to cue to keep wrists right under the shoulders because that keeps everything stacked. Sometimes it's easier to come forward a little bit. It's going to take a little bit of the strain out of the wrist. And as long as they're still pushing and engaging through there, it doesn't change a whole lot in the pose. It's like when I sprained mine, I could do downward facing dog where you're that's a lot of weight on your hands, but it didn't bother my wrist at all. But plank was a killer. Chaturanga was even harder because you're coming down. So if they can tolerate it, going on your fists can do it. Knuckles down, because that will keep the wrist more neutral. That can be really hard on your knuckles. Mine were torn up in teacher training. So another option that works well, as long as you're really clear that they don't have to pick the weight up, just a small weight they can hang on to, and that will put them in the same position as being on their fists, but doesn't have their knuckles bearing into the ground. I know that you can get equipment to do push-ups that way too, and it's the same idea. It's just taking the pressure off the knuckles and wrist. I don't know if you can hear my 3-year-old squealing downstairs. Anyone else have any? And we have a little bit of time, so if there's a different joint, or like Daniela asking about wrists, if there's something else you're curious about, we can touch on it too.
Quick question. So like when I try to do, like I only could do planks like up like this. As soon as I try to get it on my forearms, it just hurts like so much. Is there any way, or should I just avoid doing planks that way and just pretty much do them straight?
Is it the pressure like on your forearm that bothers you, or is it right in the elbow?
I think it's more of the pressure on it. Like so it just feels, I don't know if it feels just awkward or if it's just a lot of pain when I do it. Like I've never been able to do a plank that way. I can do a plank, stay up straight, totally, fine. But as soon as I try putting on my forearms, it's a lot of pain.
So you can totally stay up in that full plank. But some of the stuff I mentioned for taking the pressure off your knees would likely add that little bit of cushion. So like Daniela's tip about the bath mat, that's not going to slide around, but is soft.
Okay.
That's a big difference.
Yeah, I like that idea. I actually know I have a bath mat just for that. So perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for joining us, Anna.
I'm guessing it has more to do with just the weakness of the muscles, but anytime I have to do anything that like keeps my arms up, like
I am so with you on that. But I have to take breaks. I'll show you. I'm gonna write this note down quick, and then because this gives me ideas for future workshops on things I can cover too. But yeah, that's a huge one. And so depending on the lunge position, and it gets easier with time, but I have found, so like most of the lunges were kind of overhead, chair, we're overhead. The big thing you want to think about is we tend to do this and shrug. You really want to pull the shoulder blades down. They say relax your shoulders away from your ears. I don't find that very relaxing, but I get what they're trying to say, that you're trying to not shrug. But even so, my arms will get tired. I end up just coming down and having my hands at heart center so that my torso and everything's still in that alignment and I can still engage, but it gives my arms a break.
Okay.
I have a teacher that is notorious for keeping us in chair pose for like, I swear it's like 10 minutes of class. I always have to take my arms down because I'm like, dude, I just can't do it. Like, I can't hold it that long. And Warrior 2, I find similar to, like, if we're there for a while, my arms will get tired. So sometimes I'll just flip palms up, palms down. I'll kind of swing and come back up. You can move within a pose. I do the same thing for my knees. Say we're in a Warrior 2 for a long time, I'll kind of bend and straighten to give that quad a little bit of a break. And then I'll kind of sweep my arms down here. I'll flip them up and back. And it gets easier. I don't find myself doing it as much, but it definitely helps to just even that super short break.
And I'm sorry, what was that cue that you said that you like to use for getting the shoulders down? You said pull.
Well, like I've heard, like Christine and Fred will be like, relax.
Yeah.
I personally like you're gliding or drawing the shoulder blades down the back. That visually makes more sense to me than, because like relax, that's relax. Like,
right.
So like trying to draw the shoulders down away from your ears, to me makes more sense.
Absolutely.
But different. So you'll watch your class and be like, yeah, that didn't work for so-and-so. So let me try it this way. And you just cue it a little different. Hi, Kitty.
Perfect. Thank you.
I had to lock my cat downstairs so that I didn't have a cameo because he needs a brushing. It's a bit shaggy. Did that help, Elizabeth?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Anybody else have any questions? All right, if something comes up later today, later this week, whenever, do not hesitate to reach out to me. I think I have everybody's contact either on Facebook or via text. Shoot me a message. I'd be happy to help you out. And this is what I love to do. This is why I do private yoga sessions, is because I can give that more one-on-one attention. And even though you can come in and be like, I want to work on strengthening my hips, or I want to, and so I'll have maybe a sequence in mind, we'll try. But if we find one pose that we need to work on, this is what we could do from the ground up, completely break it down, work on how to cue it best for you so that you can feel it and get the full benefit of it. And so that's why, yes, private lessons are more expensive, but it's literally just you and me. And right now it would be on Zoom. At some point in the future, I hope to do in-person ones, but we really get that focused attention on what you need to really work on. So that's something that is available. I am, full disclosure, I will be taking some time off this summer because I won't be allowed to practice for at least 6 weeks. But I will be available via text or whatever. Like I could still talk you through things if you had questions and concerns. I am so thankful that you all came. It gave me a lot of thought on how to do similar workshops in the future. I would love to be able to do them in person and kind of come up with a sequence that goes through some of the poses we discussed so you can get in it and really feel it. So it's all these things that this has really helped me fine tune. So I appreciate you being my guinea pigs. Thank you. You will get an email. It'll come out either later today or tomorrow. It's automated through my system as just kind of a follow-up thank you. In that email will be links to my Facebook page, my page on Google, and I think I put the Yelp one on there as well. And I would be so appreciative if you could go and write a review, a testimonial about our session today to kind of let other people know too what to expect from a session, what you liked, what you got out of it, and full honesty is greatly appreciated because it also helps me know what I need to work on and how I can make things more easily understood and accessible for everyone as well. So I can stay on a little bit longer and chat, or we can sign off.
I'm sorry, I do have another question.
Yeah.
So for students who would have a herniated disc, is there
Okay.
anything we should definitely get away from? Something that we should not do, or we should be careful at the moment of queuing?
So generally, with my PT background, would want to know if they were seeing a doctor or a physical therapist, and if that person or a physiotherapist, that person told them to avoid certain things. Generally, with a herniated disc, we want to stay away from a lot of rounding, flexion, because that's going to continue to push that disc out and irritate those nerve roots. You can do forward folds and things, but your cueing will have to be really specific on keeping the spine stacked, that it comes at the hips, not the lower back, and then probably significantly backing off, like how deep they would go into that. That would be my biggest. And the same thing with the neck, making sure they're really cognizant of keeping it in line with the spine versus tucking their chin all the time or cranking on it in any direction, really.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anyone else have any questions, either about the workshop, anything else? Just want to chat. I'm up for whatever. I miss my social time, so I'll take it when I can get it.
Well, you know I want to work on my hips.
Yeah, we're gonna work on that though, right?
Yes, we are, and I know you're gonna do a workshop for that, so I didn't want to like throw that out there just yet. I don't want to blow up your spot.
That's fine. Did you have a certain question you wanted to touch on, Leah?
Not really today, but
Okay.
I can cover.
Unless that intrigued somebody else who now has a question about hips. What was that?
Okay, with hip issues, just me? Okay.
No, you're not.
I have some big hip issues, so I'd actually be really curious on doing like practice yoga with, or sessions with you to see if I can get my hip strengthened. So
Well, and I have packages and stuff available, but we could even just do kind of a one-time thing.
right.
I have the ability with doing them on Zoom to record it, so I could send you the recording and you could
Right.
work on it on your own to
Right.
like maximize benefit of what we did in a session for sure.
Okay. Yeah. I'm definitely curious. So, but right now I have a little bit of vertigo, so I've been kind of staying away from working out a little bit. So I don't know if that will mess it up at all.
I am not trained in that, but I know PTs who are. So if you want some names, I'm sure I could send you some.
Yeah,
info.
no, it's I have bell palsy, so it's kind of like I'm having a little bit of side effects from it. So like I don't want to get into details, but it's kind of from I got the shot and my body's freaking out right now. So
Oh,
from the
no.
vaccine. So but it's okay. They said that it would just kind of calm down. So I just kind of got to take it easy. So but yeah. I just don't know when I'm gonna be up to par.
Well, and we could totally just, like, I wouldn't have to do a flow where you get up and down all the time, which is what a lot of times will trigger. Or that
Yes.
we could do a slower, more like yin setup.
Okay.
And at your hips too, if that's, but no rush. You can contact me and we'll figure it out.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
Caitlin, I'm sorry, I really don't want to take over your workshop, but I
No,
think
you're good.
we mentioned Bell's palsy. Is that okay? Is that correct?
Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
Danielle, face yoga.
So I wanted to mention that next Friday at 5:30 p.m., that's my time, I'm in Mexico, I'm gonna have a short session on face yoga. And one of the potential benefits is helping people with Bell's palsy because we train our facial muscles. So if
Oh,
you do
my.
want to join, I'm happy to have you there. It's completely free.
Awesome. Yes. That definitely intrigued me a lot. So
Your Facebook group, Daniela?
Can I leave the link here on the chat box?
yes.
Otherwise, I'm in your group, so I could invite Tammy as well, but that would
Cool.
work too. Drop the link, go ahead. Because I am also fascinated in face yoga. I want to check it out.
Yes.
I do have another question, Caitlin, actually also around the hips. And after we were talking yesterday about the snapping hip thing, I was really curious what poses or stuff are best to do actually, or how to help it.
So, my like instant go-to would be, that's one I really enjoy. Have you done banana asana? You did some yin training, right?
Mm-hmm.
That, because it will get that whole chain all the way up that side. Because a lot of times I think some of that snapping has to do with some of those tendons. So that can be a really good one to do. Anything that's going to get deep into the hip flexor. So like doing that low lunge, like so here and shifting forward, or even coming into more of a lizard to really get through the front of the hip can do a lot too. The big thing is trying to.
Also a good one.
What was that?
Because for example, pigeon and butterfly, because they're also quite intense. And that's what I thought, as in maybe I've been doing too much of hip openers because I enjoy hip openers. So maybe I did too much, and maybe that's why I had that pain at some point.
And that could definitely be it, because some of that will come from the compensation of trying to build in that stability where you have so much mobility, like there's this imbalance. So our go-to is like stretch, stretch, stretch. And sometimes we don't actually, yes, you want to maintain that mobility, but you don't want to overstretch it. And so it may be that your feet bothering you in balance poses limit your ability to stay in a balance pose to really get that hip stability to work on. So that we're just the arch issues on their own could potentially play into that. Because if you're not stable on the bottom, it comes all the way up the chain and can bother the knee and the hip and the back and everything.
Okay. So is it technically better than to work on my strength in my hip, or is it, yeah, because it's, you hear me walking everywhere, my boyfriend says all the time, like, oh yeah, I know perfectly where you are now. I was thinking like, so yeah, I want to get rid of it.
So yeah, you may want to transition more to slightly more strengthening, stabilizing type poses in your practice. Still keep that mobility, but you're going to get that even in like Warrior 2 is a hip opener, as is Half Moon. Like you're still getting these strength poses while stretching. And so that might be a better option than going straight into those deeper hip openers like you would do in yin and holding it for that long. That might not be what you need right now.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
A teacher of mine once told me, he's a doctor, that since we tend to do a lot of hip openers because we want to be super bendy, sometimes we don't work on closing our hips.
Yep.
So when we walk away from our mat, we start feeling kind of weird on the hip area. So I don't know if you're closing your hips after the hip openers, like taking a very strong bridge pose, engaging your glutes a lot to kind of like put everything back in place, or a very strong chair pose, again, from your glutes to once again, just integrate your hips back to where they belong instead of having them a little bit more open, because we do have some sort of flexibility in the hip area, which is the reason why we can actually give birth, but we don't want to over open it.
Okay, didn't think about it. Thank you, Daniela.
Yeah, that's the big thing with counter poses in even like yin and stuff, is to try and, even though that is focused on that deep tissue, release that fascial layer, really loosening that up, those counter poses help kind of with that rebound and take the edge off. And we can do the same thing in a vinyasa style class. Like you do, I mean, there's the counter poses for shoulder stand, you go into fish pose, or if you do headstand or handstand, you do child's pose a lot of times. Like that balance is important. Anybody else? Your kitty just likes to be on camera, doesn't he?
Anytime I do any workout on my computer, she like literally is running through my legs, like I'm doing yoga poses, and she's my yoga kitty. Like, yeah, she definitely loves it, because I do a class with a gym, so she's always posing for them. I'm like, oh, she's gonna be.
Muskegon Yoga usually gets to see my toddler running around.
She'll let me like lift her up for a weight. Like I'll be like 1, 2, and she's just so chillaxed. She doesn't care. She'll be my weight, like.
All right, anybody have any other questions or concerns before we sign off for today? All right. Like I said, if anything comes up, do not hesitate to reach out and we can chat about your practice, about helping your clients, whatever. I'm happy to help. I can nerd out and break out all my anatomy and kinesiology books if I have to. I know right where they are. All right. So good to see everybody this morning.
Thank you, Caitlin. This is awesome.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate
Nice to
it.
meet you, Jill.
Yes, you too.
Today
you,
was really
Caitlin.
helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And thanks for showing up so early, some of you. I think Becca, Anna, and Shelby, it was all about 7 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. Hey, ladies, have a great Saturday.
You too.